Hey, warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Gibbs Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be chatting a lot about West Coast teams. We're going to be chatting a lot of Big Ten and Mountain West today with one of our good friends, Sean Paul. He does such great work over at the Field of 68 along with Action Network. He's going to be joining me, and we're just going to turn this into a two-part conversation. This is a time of year where you just don't get a lot of college basketball news. Rosters are pretty much set, which is why I've been in conference preview mode the last few days. You guys were able to get the ACC and the American conference previews the last 2 days on this podcast, and I promise you I would polish up any news and notes that we missed over the last 2 days here, and well, we didn't miss any news and notes, so we're going to be going very heavily into a lot of two-part chats going into the start of the college basketball season, and we're certainly going to be chatting with Sean just about what we're going to be seeing in terms of the added travel with the Big Ten, just with his rankings as he rated every team 1 through 18. We're going to be taking a look at some of the teams that he's bullish and bearish on in that conference, and also going to be talking about the Mountain West teams that are heading on over to the Pac-12. Will that Pac-12 in a few years be a pretty rock-solid college basketball conference? What can we expect out of those teams this year as well? And we're also going to give a little bit of love to the Big West in the back half of the show as well. As for the Big West, they're going to be in a little bit of a different spotlight this year than in past years because with the way that conferences have realigned, with the way that you're going to be seeing a lot of these West Coast teams that were out there in the Pac-12 having to travel east for a lot of these games, that's going to open up a little bit more airtime for the Big West. So we'll give a little bit of love to these teams that maybe haven't seen a ton of that you're going to be seeing a little bit more of this season. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I think that we've done all the formalities that we need. Again, please do send in those Twitter/X questions because I want to give you guys exactly what you want to hear on this show/podcast. So please do help me out. Let me know what you want to hear so that way I'm able to dive a little bit more in depth because like I said, hey, is in the barn in terms of a lot of the news and the roster moves until we really get into scrimmage/exhibition mode. But a man that is always in prime form, a man that is always doing a great job, firing all cylinders like he is in midseason form, that'd be Sean Paul. Does absolutely amazing work over at Action Network, does a tremendous job over at the Field of 68 as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Sean Paul CBB. That is SCAN on Sean. And Sean, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Greg.
Sean, I know that you were taking a little bit of a look at the Big Ten, and certainly we've got some Pac-12 teams that are moving on over to the Big Ten, but just how do you take a look at the dynamic in that conference? Because I know that you did your projections 1 through 18. I know that you gave out a few awards as well, because I just look at this conference and I don't necessarily see that one team that might be able to make the Final Four. And at the same time as well, when I look up and down that conference, I don't see that one like absolutely terrible team that's going to get completely lambasted either.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. You know, the Big Ten, obviously last year Purdue was in the national title game, and I think that's kind of been the thing for the Big Ten over the last number of years. They just haven't had that sustained success in the NCAA tournament. I mean, obviously the last team to win a national title was Michigan State back in 2000. It's been a long time. Obviously, Michigan got to the title a couple times. They haven't been able to seal the deal. Teams have gotten there a couple times, but all in all, I mean, it's been some disappointing NCAA tournament runs. Last year's a little bit better with Illinois making a bit of a run before they decided to drive on Donovan Clingan for 40 minutes. That didn't work out super well. But for me, the Big Ten this year, I think you can make an argument for anybody in the 3 through 10 range where I have Indiana to UCLA. I think you can make a case that all those teams are right in the same range. I don't think there's a huge gap between any of them. So it's easy to split them up a little bit. Obviously, Illinois fans were none too pleased about my list as they said I don't watch basketball and all that. Obviously, fans aren't always happy. It's okay. Illinois fans and I have had a rocky relationship over the years. They loved me a few years ago when I had them going to the national title game and then they lost to Loyola Chicago. They've had some other feelings about me throughout the years, but obviously Illinois fans, one of the more dedicated fan bases you'll find That Illinois team to me, though, is interesting because you can look at the upside, obviously, which they have a lot of. Kasparis Jakusionis, he could be a big piece for him. He could be their best player. But if you're relying on a player who played at a really high professional level overseas, that's big. But he's probably going to have to be their best player for them to reach their ceiling. Because otherwise, it's Kylan Boswell, who I think is a good player, was kind of disrespected for what he did at Arizona last year. He was a good player. He just had a few bad games, and his bad games were really bad. Jaden Bradley took him over, but Kylan Boswell is a good player. And then you have Ben Hummerkaus coming from Evansville. He can really shoot it. Will Riley's a 5-star guy. You have a lot of glue guy types with Trey White coming in. He should be a nice piece. And the interior is another question for me. Morez Johnson and Tomislav Ivicic, the brother of Big Z at Arkansas. Those are two guys that haven't played a single game of college basketball. So I'm a little more hesitant on things we haven't seen happen. Like, we haven't seen this team play together. They have almost nobody returning from last year besides Ty Rogers and Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. So this is an entirely new look team. We don't know who their best player is going to be. It could be Kasparis. If it's not, then I don't know who it is. So the upside is there, but I think if we're ignoring the floor, then I think we're not looking at the whole picture of what this Illinois team is. So that's why I had them a little bit lower than a team like Iowa.
And I think that's really interesting how you seeded the Pac-12 teams as well. You, much like myself, pretty bullish on Oregon. UCLA feels like you're a little bit more lukewarm on, and then USC and Washington you think are going to have some struggles. And just how do you take a look at the dynamic of this conference now? Because we both know that when it comes to home court, it means about as much in the Big Ten as in any conference in all of college basketball. And now you add in the fact that you've got 3 different time zones that are covered in this conference. And I think that home court advantage goes from being very meaningful to just somehow, some way, even more so just with the added travel.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Big Ten did a pretty good job at not trying to make too many across-country trips in their Big Ten schedule, so that should be pretty good. But all in all, Big Ten road games are the toughest road games in college basketball, and it won't be easier going to USC, going to UCLA, going to Oregon, going to Washington. I think those fan bases, though, they really need to step up because we've seen some empty stands in some of those arenas in the past in the Pac-12. This isn't the Pac-12 anymore. We're talking about some real big boy basketball over there in the Big Ten, where even if Nebraska is terrible or Minnesota is terrible, they're going to have their arenas packed out every single night. So these West Coast fan bases really need to step up and pack the arenas if they're going to want to put some fear into these opposing Big Ten teams, because they are going to be up to the task because they played in some of the toughest environments in college basketball.
And then I do need to mention this team because I am a man from the great state of Wisconsin. I had a sister that graduated from this college as well as Sean Paulo does. Great work over at the Field of 68 joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I'll reveal one team that you did rank in that list, and you're able to check it out on the Twitter/X at Sean Paul CBB. But you rated Wisconsin at number 13, and I personally think that you're relatively spot on here. I would have loved to have seen Wisconsin take a little bit more of a look at some of these more tried and true players in the transfer portal. I feel like John Tonje is going to be pretty rock solid for them, but look at this Wisconsin unit, and I didn't love what I saw from them on defense last year. It feels like this Wisconsin team always plays much differently on the road rather than at home, and I just feel like the game, for lack of a better term, just isn't necessarily what Greg Gard wants it to be at this point. I feel like the game has passed him by a little bit, and I foresee some big-time struggles for Wisconsin this year, much like you do.
I just don't really know what Wisconsin is doing in the transfer portal. I mean, you have a team like Purdue who didn't add anybody, but it's understandable. I mean, I think they should have added somebody, a Lance Jones replacement, if you will, but that's not a surprise based on what Matt Painter's done. Wisconsin added 2 guys with Xavier Amos from Northern Illinois and Cameron Hunter from Central Arkansas and John Tonje. None of those guys are going to be huge difference makers. I think Amos is probably the best of the bunch because he's 6'8", he's athletic, he can shoot it. I think he'll be a nice piece at the 4 for him, something they didn't really have a season to go with a reliable stretch 4 because Tyler Wall's game wasn't really a guy that can shoot the ball from deep. That wasn't what he did. But he's a really good player overall. But having that shooter next to Stephen Crowell will be really big. They'll have a lot of shooting on this team. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, you lost Chucky Hepburn. That was a decent-sized loss, but then you had Cameron Hunter to replace him. I mean, I'm just not sure that was a big enough add to replace Chucky Hepburn. You could have shot a little bit higher there, and ultimately they'll probably need a lot from Daniel Freitag, their freshman guard, if this team is going to make the NCAA tournament. I don't think this is a tournament team because you lost A.J. Storr, you lost Connor Essegian, who didn't play much last year, but I think on this team he would have been a whole lot better than he was a season ago. It's just a lot to replace here. John Blackwell might end up being their best player. He's a good piece. He could average 15 a game, but how many wins does that translate to? Probably not a ton. So I'm not super in on this Wisconsin team this year. Pretty disappointing overall. Greg Gard, I do think, is a good coach, and you have a solid floor with him as your head coach, but I don't think this is a tournament team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that this is going to be rough for them. And again, I just feel like Wisconsin is stuck in the olden days. They're now playing basketball the way that you should be during the 2024-25 season. So that to me is a little bit off-putting. And I think that this is a great time for our mandatory break that I have to take one per podcast and take a look coming up next. A little bit more at these teams that are actually going to be staying in the West Coast. We're going to talk about the new look Pac-12 teams, how they're going to fare in the Mountain West this season. Going to give a little bit of love to the Big West as well. That's coming up on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by this man, as Sean Paul does great work over at the Field of 68, along with Action Network. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Sean Paul CBB. That is SEAN on Sean. And we were talking a little bit in the last segment about these Pac-12 teams moving on over to the Big Ten. Now let's talk about the rebirth of the Pac-12, as we saw that over the last week or so with 4 teams deciding that they are going to reunite with Washington State and Oregon State. So right now you've got the six-pack out there in the Pacific Conference. We're just going to call it that because I don't know what else to call it because there's no 12 teams for a Pac-12 at this point. Other than Fresno State, I think that they're in for a rough year out there in the Mountain West. I feel like they did a good job of adding some talented teams on the basketball side of things from the Mountain West. I can't really speak to football, and this is a basketball podcast, so I'm frankly not too concerned about the football side of things, but I do think that from a basketball perspective, if the Pac-12 can lure in 1 or 2 more rock-solid schools, that this might not be what they were in the past, but I think that this could actually be a solid conference.
I'll say this, I never really understood the Gonzaga conversation here because I never thought they were really a fit in this conference because firstly, the Pac-12 didn't want to add any schools that didn't have football, so that instantly eliminates Gonzaga and St. Mary's as they don't field football programs, as we well know, but from a Gonzaga perspective, I don't see this being that much of an upgrade, even if the Pac-12 were interested in them, because the WCC is fine. They're going to run the WCC every year, but they would essentially be joining a slightly better version of the Mountain West, which they probably could have done already and joined the regular Mountain West. I just don't think that was ever enough of an upgrade for them, unless the money was just there where it was worth it, but ultimately I just didn't think that made a ton of sense, but adding some of the schools from the American, like a Memphis, maybe a North Texas, those do make some sense. Memphis in the Pac-12 sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, they're going to be in a power conference finally, so maybe that will end up being a good thing for them. And obviously, the biggest thing for all these schools is football. That's all they mostly care about. That's what the conferences want. That's a big money maker. So if there's a lot of football powers here, it'll probably just eventually fall into place from a basketball perspective. But I don't think these schools are really looking for the best basketball teams. They're looking for strong football programs, and if they have a good basketball program to go with it, then that's even better.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be fun to see what we're going to be getting in terms of perhaps a new look Pac-12 in the next few years. But those 4 teams that are moving over, what are some of your expectations for them in the Mountain West? Because I did say it with Fresno State, I don't think that we're going to be seeing a lot of greatness out of them, but San Diego State is a team that's in a little bit of transition. And I remember we did the Mountain West Conference preview together. Feels like both of us are very bullish on this Boise State team for the upcoming season.
Yeah, Boise State's good. I mean, they're going to have a really good season. I think lineup construction will be the most interesting thing here because they did lose Chibuzo Abo transferred to USC. That was a big loss. If they had him, this would be a clear top 25 team. They're not in that top 25 range for me right now, but I want to see what they do at the 3 because you have Alvaro Cardenas at the point guard position. He's going to be one of the better guards in the Mountain West as he was last year at San Jose State. He's going to fill a void for them that they just didn't fill last year. It was Roddy Anderson who didn't live up to expectations and Jace Whiting who was in more than a backup point guard, and it was clear that they had some problems at the guard spot. And then they add Javon Buchanan from the NAIA level. They add Dominic Perolin from Lehigh and Dylan Anderson, a 7-footer who was a top 100 recruit when he went to Arizona originally. So the thing is, are they going to go really, really big with Anderson at the 5, Stanley at the 4, and Dagan Hart at the 3? That's possible, but I don't think it's very good for defense. And Degenhardt's a good shooter, not a great shooter. Stanley doesn't shoot it a ton. Anderson, I think he can hit some, but we haven't really seen him play a whole lot in college. So I think that would be really solid for their interior defense, but I don't know how well Degenhardt would do defending athletic wings. I think that's something we don't really know what to expect from him because he's never really played the 3 at this level. I think he's just a 4 and could be a small ball 5. If you're putting him at the 3, I think that's not great for his game. So that's where a guy like Andrew Meadow could really step in, maybe a RJ Keener or Chris Lockett, some guys who are returning. But overall, I think Boise State's the best team in the Mountain West this year. San Diego State, as long as Brian Dutcher's there, they're going to be very competitive. We have a lot to see here. Maybe Jared Coleman-Jones becomes the next Nathan Mensah. Maybe that's a piece for him. Wayne McKinney coming in from San Diego. Nicholas Boyd coming in from FAU. Some guys that have done it before, but they'll need Reese Waters and Miles Bird to really take some big steps up this season. And then Colorado State, obviously losing Isaiah Stevens. That's not going to be easy to replace, but they're going to need to do it as a point guard by committee kind of deal with Ethan Morton and Keyshawn Williams, Bowen Bourne. That trio, if they can help Neat Clifford and Jalen Lake out, that'll be pretty big for them. This is a talented Colorado State roster. I don't think it's a tournament team, but they have enough pieces to really be competitive in the Mountain West this season.
And you talked about San Diego State always has a shot with Brian Dutcher. In my opinion, Colorado State always has a shot with Nico Medved. Think the world of him as a coach. As Sean Paul, think the world of him as a college basketball analyst. Does great work over at Action Network in the field of 68. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and you're much like myself, Sean. You're based out here in the West Coast. And just how do you take a look at West Coast hoops for this upcoming season? Because I feel like more people are going to be able to see some of these teams that they haven't in the past with the moves on over to the Big 10 and the Big 12 with these teams that were from the Pac-12. That's going to cause for a few more East Coast games. That means that schools like the Big West, teams out there in the Mountain West, they're going to get a little bit more shine when you got those East Coast road trips for those teams in the Big 10, the Big 12, what have you. Is there a few teams in particular that you take a look at that you're pretty bullish on that maybe people are going to be able to see for the first time and just realize how good they truly are?
Yeah, I mean, shout out the Big West always. There's nothing better than staying up till 9 p.m. our time, midnight on the East Coast, and just tune into some Big West hoops.
Later for Hawaii games.
Yeah, exactly. You're just staying up till 1 a.m. on the East Coast for that game to even tip off. It's pretty wild. It's always fun, though. I mean, if you want to see some late hoops, this is definitely worth it. And UC Santa Barbara is a team I'm really looking at. They are a new-look team this year. A.J. Mitchell goes pro. Johan Traore transfers to SMU. But this is a really talented team. I think Joe Pasternak and his staff did a terrific job retooling this roster. Stefan Swenson coming over from Stetson. He was a big piece for them making the NCAA tournament. He had a big stretch against Austin Peay where he made 3 or 4 threes in a row, I think, in the ASUN tournament to keep them going because they were really close to losing there. Deuce Turner was really good at San Diego. He's coming in. Colin Smith from Vandy. Kenny Poto from Wichita State. Max Morella is a bench big from Stanford. And they added Zion Sensley, a 4-star recruit who initially committed to St. Mary's, and he decommitted pretty late in the cycle and ends up at UC Santa Barbara. This is a guy with legitimate high major offers, and he ends up in the Big West. That is a great pool for this UC Santa Barbara team, and I think he could be a very good player with his shooting ability. It kind of comes down to how this team meshes, but this team at Santa Barbara is a lot different than last year's team because they shot it well on a percentage basis, but nobody on that team is really scaring you from three-point range besides Cole Anderson, who's one of their biggest returners this year. Last year at the 4, they didn't really have much. It was Ariel Bland and Evans Caputo. They didn't have a guy that can shoot the 3 at that 4 spot. Now they have Smith and Morrell. That makes them a lot more dynamic, so I love this UCSB team.
Yep, I'm right there with you on Cole Anderson. I absolutely love the way that he's able to pop it from three-point range, and I'm not sure how you feel about this team, but I feel like a team that isn't getting the love that they deserve is UC Riverside as well. I look at Mike Magpeo and what he's been able to do at UC Riverside. I recall when they were able to knock off Arizona State a few years ago. That was big, and we always look at in this day and age who's going to be returning a lot of minutes, and albeit Riverside needs to be a little bit of a better shooting team than they were a season ago, but this was a team that was one of the best in the country at not turning it over. And they returned that backcourt in Isaiah Moses along with Barrington Hargress. And I feel like this is a team that deserves a little bit more buzz than what they've been getting. And Joel Armatradon coming over from Cal Poly should be able to help them out a little bit on the post as well.
Yeah, I mean, this UC Riverside team returns their top 3 scorers, Hargress, Moses, and Nate Pickens. That is a really, really good guard trio, a great backcourt, and I think we could see a lot from them, especially Barrington Hargress, who is one of my favorite younger guards in the country. 12 points per game, 5 assists per game, just a really steady facilitator. awesome floor general. He's going to be great this season, average just 1.4 turnovers per game. He's the type of player that makes your entire team better. And if he's able to help guys like Caleb Smith get some shots off and Ben Gritsky, this is going to be a really good UC Riverside team this year. I almost said like 5 different UC teams. That's what happens in the Big West. We got a lot of California teams in here. But UC Riverside has a lot of pieces, and I think Mike Magpayo is a great offensive coach, so I'm expecting a lot here. I think they could be a top 3 or 4 team in this league.
And like every one of those UC teams, I think it's probably going to be in the top 6. UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, Riverside.
Hey, UC San Diego's good too.
Yeah,
you can't sleep on UC San Diego. They got some dudes, even though they lost Bryce Pope and Francis Okorie. They have some pieces still.
And Iwana Tia Jones. That's a guy, along with Tyler McGee, that is really going to be impactful for that team. So
2 dudes, yep.
Absolutely, and a man that is just a dude when it comes to looking at this great game of college basketball, when it comes to being able to line your pockets with a little bit of money as well with his great picks. That'd be you, Sean. You do a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. So let the good people at home know it's on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, if you want to see Illinois fans yell at me on Twitter, you can do that at Sean Paul CBB. Definitely didn't bother me at all that Illinois fans yelled at me, and it's okay. It only bothered me a little bit, but no, that comes with the territory. Of course, I appreciate all Illinois fans, and any college basketball fan I really appreciate, because, that's what makes this game so great. So follow me on there if you want to see some takes that might be hot, might not be hot, but I'll definitely be watching a lot of college basketball, so hopefully you all want to tune in with me.
Absolutely. You get that every single year when you call for an upset in the NCAA tournament, and that upset does not come through. The
Auburn fans hated me last year. Auburn fans were coming at me, and let me tell you, I took some victory laps. I was like Forrest Gump running out of that end zone doing some victory laps when Yale beat Auburn last year, because they were coming straight at my throat constantly.
I avoided the vitriol of many Ohio State fans when I called for that Oral Roberts upset a few years ago.
Yeah, they actually didn't come at me that hard. I think they were just mad.
Ohio State fans care a lot more about football than basketball. If you come at them for football, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah,
so
Ohio State basketball fans got to step it up. Yeah, I think Jake Diebler is going to be the coach of the year. I had them as a top 5 team. I need Ohio State fans to really get into this year. They need to actually start caring about basketball.
Hey, I like Jake Diebler as well. I thought that they made the right move retaining him. I think that there's a lot of upside with that team as well, so I'm right there with you, but there's always even more upside when we get Sean Paul aboard on this podcast, because he does such a great job taking a look at this game of basketball. Big thanks to Sean for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, and please do fire those in, because we have got all of our rosters set, and I want to do my best to get you set for the upcoming college basketball season and know what you want to hear on this podcast. You've got one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review, down to just 4 conference previews, by the way. Big East, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC, and once we do those, we're going to be set for an absolutely amazing college basketball season. We'll probably be doing about 1 a week, and then we'll take that final week and a half, get you guys set on all those questions that you've got, take a look at what we're going to be getting opening night, and then we're going to be off and running with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.